A never-before-seen battle at sea caught on videotape by a researcher off San Francisco.
Off of California in 1997, there was a very interesting event involving a killer whale attack on a great white.
Two top-of-the-line predator species that many marine biologists assumed would normally avoid each other.
It was recorded by witnesses that two killer whales were able to place a great white shark upside down, putting it into a very docile, tranquil state, and then consuming its liver.
I don't think anyone saw the actual moment of impact.
And this behavior was, I guess, unknown, especially to researchers like myself.
Till now, it was conventional wisdom. The huge shark need fear no other creature.
The more interesting piece was that the sharks that were tagged and in that area all left after that event.
Researchers don't know if the battle captured on videotape is an aberration or a routine part of nature.
There certainly is a pattern going on, because in 2015 there was an Australian event.
It's the title fight of all title fights.
The 2017 events in South Africa, and then the subsequent disappearance of the great whites.
Could this be the end of a population in an area such as Handby?
We're starting to get a lot of data points now that the killer whales are coming in. We're observing that the sharks are having their livers consumed, and then the rest of the population goes away. So what is doing this?
After the killer whale ate the one shark, all the sharks disappeared. That was based on observational data. You didn't see them. From that moment on, everything seemed to be different as far as perspective about orcas and white sharks. At that time, nobody could even imagine it.
It's not something that's ever happened here before, and especially for a long period of time.
In fact, we haven't had good shark sightings for the last 2 years, both with seven-gill sharks and white sharks. And so we suspect that the killer whales are playing a role in the presence of sharks in False Bay and other bays.
For 25 years, experts on 3 continents have been trying to figure out if killer whales hunting great white sharks is a new behavior or just new to us. And why are these mighty ancient predators running scared? After years of testing, organic chemist Eric Stroud might be onto something.
This is the alarm substance, and this is the shark repellent. This is what we want to take out to our field test on the live great white sharks. Basically, what we think is happening is when a shark dies or it's attacked and its body is left, it decomposes and it emits a substance to tell the other sharks that there's a predator that's killing us, and stay away. It's not something that's like present in a living animal. It's something that comes about after death. It might be a response in the ancient animal to help it survive, because if something is killing a shark, it's big. From a single dead shark to maybe scattering hundreds of sharks, that's an incredible repellent. We have to know more about it. We've been very fortunate here working with Dr. Scommel to get access to a great white shark head, because in our library and in all of our research, this is a sample we don't have.
Not only was I forced to get rid of this big shark head, but I know it's being put to good use.
Hopefully it's defrosted enough to work with. Let's get it down here.
Great color, looks natural.
I think what you're going to be amazed at is the fact that this jaw is so big. I'm just going to start by taking the jaw out. And the key, of course, is to have a very good knife.
The cartilage is probably the best thing that we need to make the repellent.
Shark coming from the right.
We also need someone with access to great white sharks.
From the necropsy that Eric and Craig did, Eric was able to extract that necromone from a decomposing shark tissue and mix that in the solution that we use today. Wait, this is going to be interesting. Really nice shark. 105. Mark and drone, if you can try to see if it spits it out again or not.
So that's our dream test, getting to the great whites and presenting them an extract of their own decomposing dead and seeing if they respond and conclusively say that animal was deterred. This is the piece of our research that we're missing, and this completes the puzzle if we can get that test.
A second witnessed attack may also offer more clues.
Tourists aboard a shark spotting boat witnessing the rare spectacle as the giant predator became the prey.
I was so shocked to see orca whales in South Australia, let alone Port Lincoln.
February the 2nd, 2015, we had no idea that we would be laying anchor front row to this quintessential apex predator versus apex predator.
I've been on the sea for over 26 years and it's going to take a fair bit to trump that.
I was watching intently, really trying to take in what was happening because this was an orchestrated attack.
Over 40 miles out to sea from Port Lincoln, South Australia, crew and passengers on shark cage diving boat, the Shark Warrior, were on a day trip to the Neptune Islands.
So how big's the swell today?
A breeding spot for seals and therefore a hot spot for great white sharks, which is what David and Kelly Hillman had come to see and learn about.
Dave has always said one of his bucket list things was to go shark cage diving.
It's a 3-hour trip to the islands. During that time, we'd answer any questions that the guests have. We'd just tell them a little bit about the biology and the species in general.
We were chatting with Gina, asking her questions about sharks, talking about the apex predator, obviously great white, one of the biggest apex predators out there.
The more you know about the species before you just jump in and swim with one is incredible.
We actually brought up the conversation with her, going, I can't remember who brought it up, if it was us or her, but who would win in a battle out of orcas and the great white?
As a pure hypothetical conversation.
Yeah.
I knew a fair bit about orca behaviour, however, wasn't aware of how they may hunt a shark or what that might look like.
No one knew the answer, who would actually win the battle between the two of them, and little did we know later that day.
It's very bizarre that we even had that conversation.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was an omen for what was about to happen.
We anchored the boat in the normal spot about 150 metres off the North Neptune Island, and there's a 6-foot drop-off. And it seems to be the highway along which a lot of the white sharks will use when they're searching for prey.
So once we've got the anchor down, I'll go on the back deck, help the crew, set up for cage diving in one spot.
Has anyone here not scuba dived before or used the regulator?
And we'd seen the first white sharks had come in towards the cage. The whole boatload of people were excited because there was white sharks below us.
We saw two great white sharks.
Two great whites face to face,
Yeah.
which was just
amazing.
Crazy exciting.
Yeah.
The pure size of them. You don't actually realise how big they are until you see it face to face.
It just blew my mind how big they were.
Yeah.
And they were just swimming by very slowly, calmly.
Everyone was having a great day, seeing multiple sharks.
And then in the distance, we could see an event was happening out to sea further from us, and enormous fins.
Hey guys, look straight out the back of the boat. There's a couple of orca fins working their way towards us. Oh, the baby one. Show one, pat the baby one.
My memory first, it was they spotted a huge fin, and we were like, is that a great white fin? And then someone's like, no, that's not a great white fin, that's definitely an orca whale fin. And we were like, what?
And as soon as you saw the fins, you could recognise that's orcas. That's orcas.
They're not great white shark fins at all, they're a lot larger. They're almost 3 feet out of the water.
For me, this was a really unusual phenomenon. Having surfed these waters for the last 30 years and fished extensively all around the coast, I'd never seen orcas.
So once I've seen some fins, I quickly raced down and grabbed my phone.
Straight at the back here, guys, straight out here.
There was quite a few of them. It looked like 5 or 6 orcas with that, typical movement with their big fins coming out of the water. And the thing that was really surprising was that they kept coming towards us.
They proceeded to make their way quite close to the boat. At the same time, I did notice about a 3-metre shark glide past the cage and sort of headed out in that general direction.
Skipper Kim drew our attention to the different fin that was in the middle of the pot of orcas.
There's a shark just down by Jeff there, heading out towards them.
And he said, look, it's a white shark in the middle of these orcas.
After a few minutes, we realised that something wasn't quite right. The orcas weren't just travelling past. Their movements were particularly calculated. Whatever was underneath the water, they were incredibly focused on.
That's when the orcas pretty much started to chase the shark.
Then the chase started to happen. We could see the great white coming directly towards the boat, and this was within metres of us.
And I said to the few of the crew, this is probably not going to end so well.
That shark was doomed.
The location where tourists filmed killer whales attack a great white shark off South Australia also happens to be close to a location for a very famous shark film, too.
Films like Jaws have had a profound influence on people's perception of white sharks. It was shot here out at Dangerous Reef, getting live footage of big white sharks. And because of the sound of that music, doom, 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 when a white shark comes into an area, that it's the apex predator.
Fishermen and trophy hunters once flocked to the region to kill them. But now that they're protected, it's the only place in Australia where tourists can observe great white sharks from a cage, underwater.
The business was structured around wildlife tourism, particularly Australian sea lions and white sharks. And people travel great distances to come and observe these animals in their natural habitat.
People from all over the world just flying in to Port Lincoln to go shark cage diving.
As a fisherman, I guess I see white sharks as a competitor, you know, we're both apex predators, both after the same thing. It was only in tourism that I had the opportunity to observe them up close and see them for the first time.
At the Neptune Islands, we can actually have sharks all year round.
Charlie Huveniers looks at their behavior and movements in relation to shark cage diving and shark attacks on divers and surfers.
By 2015, I had worked on white sharks at the Neptune Islands for roughly about 5 years. And at the time I was tagging a lot of sharks, so I was in frequent communication with the cage diving operators. And I remember receiving these phone calls from the operators telling me that there had been some orca sightings around the Neptune Islands and potential predation from an orca on one of the white sharks.
The first battle of two sea titans ever captured on video.
I straight away thought about what happened in 1997 in the Farallon Islands.
October 4th, 1997. The Farallon Islands off San Francisco was the location for the very first recorded event where a great white shark becomes the prey of another species.
When push came to shove, it was no contest. Brains and blubber over the lean, mean tooth machine.
Oh my God!
I'm used to seeing marine mammals inside of white sharks, you know, not the other way around.
The battle has marine scientists today rethinking the balance of nature in the deep seas.
For one key witness, it still feels like yesterday, nearly 25 years later.
Even now, if I make any reference to that having happened and my having seen it, the room falls silent and people want to know details. I still get a chill when I think about it. 1997, I was trying to photo ID blue whales and humpback whales that feed in the Greater Farallons Marine Sanctuary. And we were just starting to get into the deeper water, and we were hailed by another boat to tell us that there were a couple of killer whales that had just killed a sea lion immediately adjacent to Southeast Farallon Islands. So we headed straight over there and discovered two killer whales that were milling around. They came over to the boat. They seemed as intrigued by us as we were by them. One of the killer whales stopped the milling behavior, and
she was moving on an intercept course with this brown object, which was beginning to look very much like a shark. They disappeared into the waves pretty much. I don't think anyone saw the actual moment of impact, but shortly thereafter, we could see the larger orca very clearly having this large thing in its mouth. We did not see blood immediately. We didn't see threshing, and it appeared that she just held on to it for quite a few minutes. And then she actually started to shake it.
15 minutes later, the killer whale reappears, heading toward the boat. carrying an inverted white shark in its mouth. It was like bringing us a trophy to examine, feeling very proud of itself.
So I called Mick and I said, what's going on? And he said there's an orca with a shark in its mouth and it's right here at the island.
We were truly shocked, and we just could not wrap our minds around what we were observing.
Everything seemed to be different as far as perspective about orcas and white sharks.
Is he eating the shark? I couldn't see.
Witnesses saw what experts would later figure out was a form of tonic immobility. An intelligent predator put the shark into a trance by turning it upside down, just like scientists do in the field when working with different types of sharks.
Which might have reduced the response of the shark and made it easier for the killer whale to predate on it.
And that, in essence, puts it to sleep. And a sleeping animal is much easier to kill. And so once they do that, they actually extract the liver out of the gills, the gill slits. They try to attack in through those soft regions, which is absolutely amazing to me. How do they figure that out?
For a long time, it pretty much stood as the only truly documented case of predation by killer whales on the white sharks. But then subsequently, we have heard reports coming from different parts of the world.
18 years later and 8,000 miles away, it was uncanny how similar the stories were.
From a predatory behavior perspective, it is interesting to see how these orcas are using different techniques for the same prey item.
It turns out that the hunting techniques of the killer whales off Australia appeared to be very different indeed. February 2nd, 2015 was possibly only the second time that humans witnessed and captured on video orcas hunting down a great white shark. But this time, the giant predators deployed a different method of attack.
3 killer whales in attack formation.
The whale's actually attacking the shark. You know, never would have thought that would have happened.
You could see that the orcas were on a mission. They were hunting in a pattern with a couple of them on either side of the shark and a couple below, and then they would change places.
We could see they were herding up the great white. We could see that the great white fin was coming directly towards the boat, which was just so scary and exciting all at the same time.
And then the people down below in the cage could hear all this sound of orca, that distinctive call.
They were highly, highly vocal, and their communication was so distinct and so cooperative. It was incredible to hear, incredible to see, but at this point we still didn't know.
And it wasn't until I heard Kim shout out,
Check it out, straight back there, behind the boat. Oh. Oh, he's got him! Oh, he's got him! Check that out, guys!
We were just absolutely dumbfounded. And so as we're watching this, we're really trying to commentate what's happening.
Something you're not going to see every day. Shark's in the water. Oh, he's got him! Check that out, guys!
Oh my God!
You see a white shark on its own when it's hunting at the Neptune Islands, and it's a creature of stealth. It's a confident beast. It's not scared of anything in the water. And this shark, it was in shock. It didn't know what to do. Like, its body language was saying, I'm done for.
The shark wasn't moving extremely fast. I've seen them move very fast, 25, 30 miles an hour.
It was like a choreographed hunt where they were pinning this shark on the surface, and the shark was doing everything it could to get away. And when the orcas had had enough, one of them just made the ultimate decision and attacked.
Sort of missed the first time. Just made the shark do a U-turn and started heading towards the boat, pretty much directly at us.
You could see the shark was confused, going, left and right, and didn't know where to go.
Having witnessed a lot of sea creatures in the wild, they tend to try and spill a predator onto something else. We've seen seals try and spill sharks onto other creatures and even onto surfers. And this shark seemed to be leading the orcas towards the boat to spill the orcas to get a break so that it could get free.
And that's when the pod of orcas, we saw them come out of the water and it looked like they just sort of body slammed the shark.
And one of the big females lurched up, grabbed hold of the shark, and you could see its neck and its back pulsating, shaking the shark vigorously.
You could see it shudder, the whale shudder as it made contact with the shark.
And it was merciless.
We don't know what was happening underneath the water, but judging from the surface, it was almost chaotic. The shark was certainly not displaying signs of defensive behaviour, but of a flight response. It was almost panic.
We saw it jumping on the great white, munching down, and we couldn't see that part underwater, but definitely attacking him.
It wasn't too dissimilar to carousel feeding, where the orca work as a team to herd their prey into a tight-knit ball. However, this isn't a school of herring. They're not taking it in turns to go in and feed. They're not pushing a number of animals together. This is just the one shark.
Based on what happened in South Australia, there was no real tourniquet mobility, but it was more a question of having more individual orcas coordinating that predation on the shark.
Orcas hunting packs, so the shark was definitely outnumbered.
It was amazing to see a white shark become so submissive, surrounded by orcas.
Poor guy didn't have a chance.
It was truly spectacular, and then it was all over. Except there was a slick. Like in fishing, we use burley, and it leaves the oils and the juices float to the surface and create a layer of oil.
Which indicated the shark's probably met its match.
We immediately assumed that the orca had specifically targeted the liver of the shark.
The killer whales off South Australia may hunt differently to those off California, but they're both after the same thing.
So they had eaten liver, it floated right up and they ate that. I've seen the video that was shot. You can see that the orca was holding on to the shark.
It's almost like a surgical strike. And just go for the liver, forget everything else.
The killer whales are able to work cooperatively to literally tear the shark open and extract the liver, which I think is pretty amazing because it requires an amazing amount of strength. Look at the knives I'm going through and I'm just cutting a jaw out. Imagine trying to tear open a white shark. Strong, powerful, tough skin, rough skin.
It was game, set, match for that shark.
That may be all the killer whales want, but a great white shark's liver is not your average liver.
So the first thing that you see when you do a dissection of the shark is that liver that sticks out. It's formed in two lobes on either side of the body.
We'll weigh the liver. It'll weigh hundreds of pounds. It could be the third of the body weight of the shark.
That's actually very, very large. The reason why it's so large is because sharks are negatively buoyant. So that in contrast to fish, if a shark dies, it will sink. When a fish dies, it will float. And that's because fish have a swimming bladder, but sharks do not have that swimming bladder. So to compensate for that negative buoyancy, sharks have this very large liver, which are very rich in oil.
You can get the oil all over your hands as you're weighing it.
And oil is positively buoyant. So if you have a cooked pasta, if you put oil in the water, you will find your droplets of oil on the surface because it's positively buoyant compared to water.
It makes sense to me, the fact that they're eating the liver. It's not only a natural filter for the shark that filters the blood, but it's an energy storage organ. It's loaded with oils, which are rich in energy, and also other compounds, like glycogen, which is, of course, glycose, sugar. Really, the foie gras of the shark itself. So they're going for that energy-rich organ.
These killer whales are able to have as much calories as possible from just ingesting the liver instead of having to go through the entire shark body, which also includes other parts that are not as energetically beneficial compared to the liver.
It appears to be all they want, and they're very clever about how they go about getting it.
They ate the most nutritious part, but then there was parts of the carcass left over. Probably the caudal fin and the head and other pieces of its cartilaginous skeleton. So that probably sank, and then it began to decompose.
And what happened next at the Neptunes was clear.
The orcas disappeared to the west, and once they had gone, they were gone, and as it turned out, so were the sharks.
Just like at the Farallon Islands off California, the great white sharks left the Neptune Islands after the one killer whale attack. Why they left was a mystery.
You couldn't buy a white shark. You couldn't coax one in from anywhere.
Went cage diving the next day. There was nothing. There was nothing seen by any operator for over 2 months.
Which was crippling for the industry.
So we didn't see sharks for 3 months after that.
I kept communicating with the operators to try to find out the following days whether there was any changes in the behavior of the white sharks. And that's when it wasn't just a change of behavior, is that all of the white sharks had actually left the area.
Usually sharks come and go from the Neptune Islands over various time frames, but to have them all disappear at almost exactly the same time was clearly associated with that event.
I did the next trip on the Friday. We go to the same part of the islands each trip, and it seemed that the body of the shark was still in the same location because the slick was still there. It looked to us that that shark was still oozing underwater. Because I'm a fisherman and because I know the impact of burley on attracting fish, they'll follow the scent through the water and come to where you're fishing. Now, this was like the reverse of that. This is the juice of a dead shark. This was necromones.
One of the ways that animals communicate is through odors and smells by releasing what we call pheromones. One type of pheromones are typically referred to as necromones because they relate to the smell of death or the decomposing flesh of an animal. This has led Eric to think that these properties of the necromones could be used as a shark deterrent, possibly to protect people from shark bite, but also to try to reduce interaction of sharks on long lines or recreational fishing.
With our modern instruments, we know there's a lot of complex molecules that show up on a decomposing shark. Things that are called alarm substances or defense secretions. It's the things that make animals tend to leave areas.
Somehow, through the ocean, the message got out that orcas were killing white sharks.
Because I had known that some of my colleagues had similar events, I contacted friends in South Africa, Alison Koch and Alison Towner, to try to better understand their experience and whether what we saw in South Australia was similar, and then what could this lead to.
Back in 2017, there was an extremely famous spate of events that occurred where 2 killer whales, port and starboard, entered the research site that I'm based in Gansbaai and proceeded to predate on 5 great white sharks. The necropsies took place and confirmed that each shark was ripped open, had its liver missing.
Dave Hurwitz and Simon Elwin have been tracking these 2 killers for years.
The story started with them being linked to predating on 7 gill sharks, and then they shifted across to taking out white sharks.
We had sharks being washed up with livers removed and clear tooth impressions from killer whales on their pectoral fins, and always around the time that port and starboard were around.
Highly recognizable by their unusual bent dorsal fins, one to the left and one to the right. Something that happens in captivity, but is rare in the wild.
Neither of them has any obvious injury. So what's left there is the diet. They seem to be specializing very much on sharks. Perhaps there's some nutrient that's missing from their diet that's weakened the cartilage, or perhaps because they're now eating much higher up the food chain, potentially they have a higher pollutant load.
But it hasn't stopped them from doing what they do best: hunt sharks.
Here we are in 2020, 3.5 years down the line from when port and starboard predated on great white sharks in Gansbaai and other species of sharks in False Bay, Cape Town. Where are we at? No white sharks.
We're at Seal Island. This is the mecca for great white sharks, or shall I say it used to be the mecca. It's in fact shark season now. We would normally have expected about 4 boats here. On an average day, they would see probably about 30 predations, almost like salmon jumping out of the water. But since port and starboard started showing up, the sharks have disappeared. The seals know that there are no sharks here, and they actually move right into that 8-meter channel when a few years ago, if they ventured into that area, there'd be a McDonald's for a great white within 5 minutes.
Post these events in 2017, everything changed in this region from an ecological perspective, but also from an economic perspective.
All the shark cage operators have literally closed shop for the last 2 years. They're really hoping that the sharks are going to return.
But nature abhors a vacuum.
In the wake of white sharks being absent, something very interesting happened. Another species of shark started to aggregate, called the bronze whaler shark. And what these bronze whalers did was provide the tourism sector the ability to run the shark dive tours, minus the great white shark. We really hope that bronze whalers were able to evade port and starboard, and that they were somehow not on the hit list for this pair of killer whales.
But that wasn't to be the case. In May 2019, for the first time in South Africa, port and starboard were witnessed hunting a bronze whaler shark.
We saw not only the predation, but we also saw the technique that the killer whale used to kill the shark. I'd always thought that the two animals would actually combine, each grabbing a left or right peg, and then forcing through a sideways motion the area under the gill to part, and then reveal the liver which they would eat. What happened in this instance is that only starboard grabbed the shark literally round its neck, just in front of its pectoral fin.
It had a bronze whaler shark upside down, or sort of almost upside down, in its mouth, and it swam right past us and then went off on its own.
And it flicked it almost like a cowboy would crack a whip. And that animal's neck opened up almost like a zipper. You could see the tear. Starboard then repositioned its grip on the shark, obviously to try and locate the front end of the liver, and then took it down, and in one flick, that was it. The shark floated away, and the killer whale had the liver. And as soon as the kill happened, port accelerated and was alongside starboard, and we presume, as killer whales do, that they actually shared the spoils, and then they moved off. The whole experience just left us completely stunned.
What we're now beginning to learn about port and starboard is that they're not specializing only on white sharks. They will predate on various species, and no species of shark is safe from them.
The smaller species seem to also be affected by port and starboard's hunting habits. But the disappearance of the great white sharks around South Africa is the most shocking. Theories abound.
Some people believe that it's overfishing, perhaps even climate change. There's no real definitive answer, but port and starboard's presence has certainly been a whole lot more than a coincidence.
One thing that is unquestionable is that white sharks do not stick around when killer whales move through their habitats. So why do they flee these areas? What causes them to move away at speed?
What I find quite interesting is the strength of the response that these white sharks, and all the sharks in general, have shown. This strong evasion of another predator is not something I'm aware of in any other top predator. Dolphins get taken out by killer whales on a regular basis. They don't all leave the area for weeks on end. It's really an incredible response.
There are many theories as to how white sharks know that killer whales are around, and then what drives their flight responses. A flight response is when a great white shark vacates an area and does not return for long time periods, upwards of months. So one theory is visual.
It's like a ghost town. The sharks get scared away, and you swim into the area, and you're like, where's everybody now? What's up with this place? Something ain't right. And so you leave.
Two is sound. Is there a way that a white shark could hear the vocalizations or the noise that killer whales make when they're hunting?
Sound is an important sensory system that white sharks take advantage of. But they tend to focus on low-frequency sound levels. And of course, if you're a top predator like a killer whale, you don't want to send out a warning.
They were highly, highly vocal.
An interesting theory is the smell, the scent of death, and it's not impossible that other white sharks may detect that scent, and the scent alone may cause them to flee the area.
Tagged sharks off California have clearly shown they leave the area when killer whales are around. Fortunately, in 2015, some of the South Australian great whites were tagged too, which helped confirm their flight response.
Because even though operators might not see the sharks the following days, the sharks must still be in the area, just not coming to the surface. So when we downloaded the receivers from the Neptune Islands, we were able to see that all of the tagged sharks left the area on the exact same day of that interaction.
We're starting to get a lot of data points now that the killer whales are coming in or observing that the sharks are having their livers consumed, and then the rest of the population goes away. And from my research, it's telling me that there's a chemical signal that's coming off of the carcasses that are pushing the rest away. That's very interesting, and that's something we need to study.
The trial starts now. We go for 15 minutes, 12:53. Yep, we can put it out now. Okay, the shark coming first approach.
And it seems to have disappeared.
It's now an international mystery. Why do sharks flee an area after one predatory event by killer whales? Evidence points to the smell of death.
Several species are known to have a behavioral response to the smell of a dead individual of the same species.
It's exhibited in honeybees. Animals in complete darkness know how to clean up their dead and remove things from the colony. They emit things like oleic acid as signals to tell it that something has died, do something.
Eric's earlier research has shown that some sharks are affected by the smell of their own dead.
Yeah,
I've been studying sharks for almost 40 years now, and we hear the old folklore about fishermen wanting to repel sharks by using the carcasses of sharks, and I've seen that. I still see it used to this day.
The idea of using chemicals to deter sharks probably originated in the 1940s in World War II, when there were fears that fighter pilots would be exposed to sharks if they shot down over water.
Our government in the 40s and 50s took a look down this path, and they started to look at decomposing shark tissue to see if they could create a chemical based on that.
It went through different phases, and currently the main attempt to use chemicals to repel sharks is through the work of Eric Stroud, trying to incorporate that smell of a dead shark into a device or a can that you can use to try to repel sharks.
But he's never done it with white sharks before. This is a perfect opportunity to not only extract these compounds, but now we can go test it.
We've been very fortunate here working with Dr. Scommel to get access to a great white shark head, because in our library and in all of our research, this is a sample we don't have. We don't have any chemical analysis on this, so we don't really know much about it after decomposition. Now that we have the sample, we can process it and we start looking at that.
Because of the potential for necromones to reduce shark bite risk, I would love to be able to test the necromones on white sharks and see if it can actually stop a white shark from taking a bait.
This is a difficult test because it's a protected species of shark. You have to travel very far, usually to get to them in a situation where you can test with them.
So ideally, I'd love to be able to do this in a very controlled laboratory environment, but that can be quite tricky to do with white sharks.
And of course, the logistics of shipping chemicals to places like South Africa or to Australia to get to the sharks in their season and get the permit and do it just in that nick of time, it's a challenge we haven't overcome.
Until now. From East Coast America to Southern Australia, Eric was able to get his great white shark repellent to Charlie for testing.
We're about 20 nautical miles from the Neptune Island, which is where the interaction between the killer whales and white sharks happened a few years ago. One of the ways to test this would be to put that smell or that necromone on a bait and see if the white shark would still take that bait or not. This is just a gill from a southern bluefin tuna, which we use to attract the sharks and get them to come up close to the boat. When the shark is in the area and attracted to the bait, we'll be able to swap that with another bait that's been dunked in that necromone and compare the behavior of the shark between a normal bait and the bait that's been in the necromone. And now the waiting game starts. I'd love to know when the sharks are going to arrive, but it can really be anything from 2 minutes to 8 hours. It could be a shark. Yep, that's a shark. So that seems to be a good shark. I would say 3.5 to 4 meters. The trial starts now. We go for 15 minutes, 12:53. Yep, you can put it out now. Okay, the shark coming from the right, first approach, first pass, 1.5 meters. Shark still around on the left.
And it seems to have disappeared. You see it at all?
On the left, I can see it.
Okay, yep, coming in.
Second approach, Josh, past 1. Say 2 meters. Yeah, that's past 2. Getting closer. Getting closer. 1 meter or 1.3. Past 3. Might go for it. I'll leave it. Yeah, that's taken. So that's trial 1. That's for the control. Can I get that in the bucket? Once the Necromone is on it, once you open the drum, just pour the whole thing on the gill. Yeah. So hopefully it hangs around. At least we know there's one around here, which is a good sign.
So this is the Necromone. This is the essence of dead white shark. And we have in the bucket here a set of gills, which is now soaking in that.
On the left. George, can you write down that the Necromone was put on the bait at 12:45? Okay, let's try the Necromones now. Drone, have a look. Shark coming from the right, still interested. Wait. We need to swim away first. This is going to be interesting. Really nice shark. Smell it, doesn't it? It has a bit of smell. Yep. 105. Mark and drone, if you can try to see if it spits it out again or not, that'd be useful. Approach 1, pass 1.
Let him get it.
0.
Let it go. Spat it.
Yeah. So far, the shark's taken it twice, but spat it twice as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if we see the same patterns keep going. And in comparison with the control, the shark took the bait as well, but seems to have kept it.
So interestingly enough, on the last trial, which was with the Necromones, the shark got a good mouthful and it spat it out and drifted away and actually hasn't come back, whereas it was really hanging around before.
While obviously what we're doing is useful to get an understanding of what the Necromone could do, it's also very different to a full-size white shark decomposing for several months. What Eric does is kind of extract those molecules and incorporate that into a solution. It's not the same as a decomposing carcass. And our tests show that whilst it didn't stop the shark from taking the bait, it seemed to have a behavioral effect from the shark spitting the bait out and also after the second one leaving the area and so far not coming back.
The last thing about that to remember is doing it once doesn't count. We have to do a test like that over and over again to make sure that what we've got and what we're seeing is true, science is sound.
So in the context of an interaction between killer whales and a white shark, that could suggest that it has an impact on it. But it's still very early days.
There is a strong possibility that these alarm substances that come from decomposing shark tissue have given the shark a tremendous evolutionary advantage. Perhaps this is what's allowed sharks to survive for so long. Perhaps there was enough material left that told the other great white sharks, you have a decomposing kin. It's time to get out of this area. Something is attacking you.